Doctors across India are protesting as horrific details emerge about the rape and murder of a young female doctor in a hospital in Kolkata. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. The details that we now know are truly, truly horrific about what happened in the RG Kar Medical College. We know now that the woman's body was found with multiple injuries. Some reports suggest 11 grievous injuries. We know that she was bleeding in her private parts and her eyes. We know that there were scars across her body. The police say that she may have been murdered and then raped, or raped and then murdered. That is still to be ascertained. We know that one man, the accused rapist, has been arrested, and he made a rather peculiar remark saying, "Hang me if you want." We know that Mamta Banerjee has met with the parents, but the BJP is alleging a cover up. They believe that the entire story has not come out. The opposition party in West Bengal says initial police statements seem to suggest that two semen samples were found at the spot where the young doctor was raped and murdered, and later the police, in fact, retracted that. But most of all, what we must ask today is how do we ensure the safety and security of doctors in hospitals across India? Most of all, we must ask how we ensure, in particular, the safety and security of female doctors. Remember, this was a trainee doctor who was on duty, on her shift till about 2 in the morning, and her body was then found in the seminar hall of this publicly owned and run and managed hospital. The principal of the hospital has resigned amid a growing uproar, not just in West Bengal, but across India. And as a woman, I am chilled to the bones to read about what happened to this young woman whose name we must protect by law. We are not allowed to disclose the name of a rape victim, according to the laws in India. But what's happening in Bengal? Will there be justice? Has the full horror actually been placed in the public domain? Is the state government being responsive? Is the police doing what it ought to? Or is there more to this yet than meets the eye? Let me introduce our guests on the program today. As we look at this horrible incident, I'm joined by Dr. Raja Dhar. He's the director and the head of Pulmonology department at the BIRLA Hospital. Welcome, Dr. Dhar. I'm also joined by Dr. Faizan Ahmad. He is the national vice president of the All India Medical Students Association and also senior resident at the KGMU Hospital. And I'm also joined by Abantika Paul, who's a doctor and an author, and also has been trying to create awareness across India at this horror that has unfolded. Dr. Dhar, I'll start with you. We know that one arrest has been made. Do we know if there was more than one man involved in this? Because there are certain suggestions that this could have been the work of more than one accused rapist. Initial reports suggested that there were two semen samples. Is what is needed to be done, has it been done, or is there more yet that the doctors are hoping for and expecting? Dr. Dhar, I'll start with you.
So, Barkha, thank you. I think you mentioned in some details as to what happened to the lady in question. And I think the amount of injuries that have been described, there's a pelvic bone that's been described as being fractured. So we have seen the victim, the perpetrator of the crime, the guy who's been arrested. And we also know the lady. I mean, I work in Kolkata. I am a chest physician, and I know the lady in question personally. It is impossible for the lady to have had the fractures, the injuries that she's had, been given to her by one person. I say impossible, I never say impossible, but I think it's very unlikely that there's been one person who's actually caused so much of harm. So I think there's more to the story which will evolve over a period of time. I think this gentleman was probably one of the people involved in the crime, but I would be very surprised if this was the work of one man. I think there will be more than two or more for sure, who was involved in this crime. I think there's more to the story coming.
Then what you're saying, Dr. Dhar, and again, it's so important because you're saying the scale of the injuries, the scale of the pelvic injuries point to the work of at least two, maybe more. Basically, then, Dr. Dhar, we are looking at a gang rape. We are looking at a gang rape and not the work of one man. And that one arrest that has been made is not is not the full scale of what we need at this point. Am I correct in summarizing you?
You're right, Barkha. And you have to understand that while the gentleman who's been arrested is a civic volunteer, for someone, the lady was in the seminar room in her own department. And people who are an insider would only know that the lady was there at the time by herself. So I think there needs to be more explanations as to how the lady was found alone in her room. The degree of injuries that we talked about are too much to be explained by just one man being there. So all of this put together, I would suspect that there are more people. This is, I'll put it in the words that you said, Barkha, this is a gang rape rather than one person who's actually assaulted this lady.
In which case, where does the needle of suspicion, Dr. Dhar, fall? Because you're saying something very important here, and I want our audience to take a moment to reflect on it. This is a gang rape by the evidence and the scale of the injuries that have been found on the victim's body. Where does the needle of suspicion fall? For example, about this one arrest, we know that he was a civic volunteer. Are we looking at volunteers like him? Are we looking at someone inside the hospital? What are we actually looking at?
So I think this civic volunteer has, it's been claimed that he is actually an insider, although he should not be. He's been found roaming around the hospital in the past. I think it has to be someone who's got good knowledge about what happens in the hospital, where the on-call rooms are, where the seminar room is. And at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, unless it's an insider, you would not really know what's going on with the whereabouts of this lady. So I think we shouldn't hypothesize as to who the individual might be, but it suffice to say, I think it's important that it is someone who knows about the whereabouts of this lady, the on-call, the chest department. All of this needs to be known for the crime to be perpetrated the way it has been. So I'll keep it there. I think the rest goes into the realms of hypothesis, I think.
Okay, so this much you are saying, Dr. Dhar. One, that the nature of injuries, and you mentioned pelvic injuries and a pelvic fracture. Am I correct?
That's what we have heard. So that's what the handwritten. So, there's such a lot circulating on the social media. So what's come to us has been the fact that there has been multiple fractures, including a pelvic fracture. And you understand that there's a huge amount of force which needs to be applied if a lady in her early 20s or mid 20s needs to have a fracture of the pelvis. And I would think that it's going to be very difficult for one man, especially the man whose photograph you've just shown a little while ago, for him to commit a crime of the range that's been described.
Well, Dr. Dhar, first I must say that since you know the lady in question personally, my heart goes out to what you must be going through. My heart goes out to the family of this young doctor and to doctors everywhere and to women everywhere. And please accept my commiserations, my condolences, but also my anger, because I think it's very important to show some anger right now. What Dr. Dhar is telling us, that the nature of the injuries, multiple fractures, point to a gang rape, point to someone who's familiar with the geography of the hospital, whether it was a civic volunteer or somebody else. And this is as much as we know at this moment. Avantika, if you would like to comment on these revelations that have been made by Dr. Dhar, who's coming out and saying there's more than one man, at least two, maybe more. This was a gang rape. Her body has been found with multiple fractures. It is just bone chilling.
Yeah. Thank you for Barkha, first of all. I also think this must be a case of gang rape, because just few hours ago, a deputy CMOH of our state have clearly mentioned the postmortem report, and he has already explained that there is a huge quantity of semen sample is found from the victim's vagina, which is almost 150 grams, and which is not possible for just one man. So there must be more than two, maybe 3 or 4 person who can be accused in this case. So I also think I agree, Dr. Dhar, totally.
When we are talking about a gang rape situation, Abantika, Dr. Abantika and Dr. Dhar, we are then talking about these rapists still being out at large. And that is very worrying because, one arrest has been made. The others are still out there somewhere, Dr. Bantika. The other men, Dr. Dhar, are still out there somewhere. They are out there. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
Absolutely.
what? Yeah. So what do we feel about that? The fact is that the arrest has been of one man. Both of you have reason to believe, medical reason to believe, that this is the work of more than maybe even two men. This is a gang rape. So that means that the perpetrators are out there.
I mean, if what we are saying is correct, Barkha, yes, they are out there. But you think of the circumstances. This is a young lady who's worked as a trainee in the city in her own hospital. She's in the safe haven of her own department, which is a work home for her. She's working
Yeah.
a night shift, which has gone on till about 2:30. She's gone to the seminar room to sit down and take some rest and maybe read, study it during the time. And in that safe haven, she gets attacked in the time span of 3 or 4 hours to the extent that you've described, and is then murdered. So think about, I mean, we're talking about the doctor, Barkha, but think about women at large. I mean, there are other professions, including yours, where women would
Yeah.
go out and do night shifts. There are people
Absolutely.
who will be returning home late at night, and that's outside the safe haven of their working place. That's outdoors. So what happens to safety for women generally? I think we are talking doctors here. There's far more to
Yeah.
it. There are women of various professions who are at risk if incidents like this is the most ghastly incident I've heard of in my entire life, to be honest. It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point that you've made, that this is about doctors right now, but it is about all women. And I want to just bring in at this point, Dr. Syed here. We keep losing you, sir, but please go ahead with your thoughts. What you missed at this point was both Dr. Dhar and Dr. Pal talking about how only one man has been arrested. Medical evidence suggests a gang rape. Multiple men, not just two, maybe three or four even, which means that the rapists are out there, or at least the other rapists are out there. The other killers are out there.
Thank you, ma'am, for inviting me on the panel. I agree with both of my seniors. ये जो इंसिडेंट हुआ है, ये सिर्फ एक इंसान का करा हुआ नहीं था. ये जो है इसमें मल्टीपल लोगों का इन्वॉल्वमेंट है. इनिशियली तो जो स्टेटमेंट आया था एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की तरफ से, उन्होंने ये चीज़ का बोला था कि यहाँ पे जो लड़की ने सुसाइड किया है, बल्कि जो बॉडी की कंडीशन उस टाइम थी वो उनके बहुत ज़्यादा मल्टीपल उसमें जो है इंजरीज थी, जो कपड़े डॉक्टर के फटे हुए थे, उसके बावजूद भी उनके तरफ से बोला गया कि जो है कि ये लड़की ने सुसाइड किया है. तो उसी पॉइंट पे लग रहा था कि हम लोगों के कुछ ना कुछ यहाँ पे बातें घुमाई जा रही हैं. तो जिस तरीके से एक को पकड़ा गया है, लग रहा है कि किसी को स्केपगोट बनाया गया. देयर इज समवन एल्स इन्वॉल्व्ड इन दिस केस. सो वी जितने भी रेजिडेंट डॉक्टर्स हैं डिफरेंट मेडिकल कॉलेज के इन्वॉल्विंग ऑल इंडिया मेडिकल इंस्टीट्यूट एम्स एंड सफदरजंग हॉस्पिटल, KGMU लखनऊ, जितने भी इंडिया के मेडिकल कॉलेजेस हैं, सब ने अपनी OPD शट डाउन कर दी है. सब ने अपनी इलेक्टिव सर्विसेज को बंद कर दिया है, इलेक्टिव सर्जरीज को, इलेक्टिव इंटरवेंशंस को बंद कर दिया है. वी आर जस्ट रनिंग ओनली इमरजेंसी ड्यूटीज. वी आर जस्ट डूइंग अवर इमरजेंसी ड्यूटीज ताकि डॉक्टर जस्टिस मिल सके. वी आर डिमांडिंग फॉर CBI इंक्वायरी रिगार्डिंग दिस, ताकि किसी दूसरे आदमी को स्केपगोट ना बना के जो रियल विक्टिम है उसको, जो रियल इसमें कल्प्रेट है उसको पकड़ा जाए, ताकि आगे से इस चीज
जब आप कहते हैं कि रियल कल्प्रिट को पकड़ा जाए, व्हाट डू यू मीन? आपको क्यों लगता है कि जो पकड़ा गया है वो हो सकता है 4 आदमियों में से एक हो, लेकिन रियल कल्प्रिट से क्या मानना है आपका?
दिस माइट बी पॉसिबल कि उन 4 में से एक कल्प्रिट ये हो, लेकिन जो है जिस तरीके से उसने जो एक फौरन से अपने से गुनाह को कबूल कर लिया, सो स्टिल देयर आर सम सस्पेक्ट. उसने बोला है कि अकेला उसने ही किया है, तो ये चीज पॉसिबल नहीं लग रही कि एक आदमी का ये काम है ना. चीज कि जिस तरीके से टॉर्चर कराया गया, जिस तरीके से मारा गया, और द मल्टीपल इंजरीज हैं उनके प्राइवेट पार्ट्स में, उनकी आईज में. शी वाज ब्लीडिंग फ्रॉम माउथ, शी वाज ब्लीडिंग फ्रॉम आईज. सो आई थिंक यू हैव रेड the postmortem report of this lady.
Yes.
Just a
request to, yes, it's horrible, but please let's not take her name. The law requires us to protect her identity, so please can we refrain from taking her name? I know everyone's upset, but thoda sa we'll try and just avoid identifying her. Dr. Dhar, have you spoken to the parents, since you know the victim personally? I mean, they must be just devastated. And you made the very critical point that this is about women working everywhere. Women like myself, we go into war zones and conflict zones, and we're out at all odd hours. And to the initial blaming of the victim has been very distressing. The principal has now resigned, but the administration of the hospital initially sought to blame the victim. One, how do you feel about that? And two, if you can tell us about how her family is holding up, what they're looking for right now, what they must be going through, Dr. Dhar.
So, Barkha, I have not personally spoken to the mom and the dad. The Association of Chest Physicians of West Bengal, which is the official body for which the lady in question was also a member, they sent 2 lady representatives along with a few others to her home to speak to the parents. But I am privy to the fact that they are absolutely devastated. They want justice. However, the chief minister of the state has personally spoken to them and has pledged that the state would support, and the entire team, the police, the political party will support in trying to bring justice to her, which is what she wants to wait for. But she's very firm in saying 2 things. One, she wants to find justice and to try and find out the entire perpetrators, the entire, not just one person, like Faizan said, but the entire number of people. And the second, she wants to find out what steps the state is taking at a hospital level, both in the government and in the private sector and other sectors that you spoke about, Barkha. What steps will be taken to prevent such incidents from happening in the future? So I think that's the other thing that she's really stressed on, the mom, I mean, and the dad has said things on similar lines.
And I think it's extraordinary that the mother, in her state of devastation, can even find the generosity at this point in her pain and anger to think about other women. Dr. Abantika, as a woman, I think Dr. Dhar is very correct in saying that this is about women in all professions, particularly in those professions that do not have structured hours. Medicine is certainly one, media is another. There are many professions. We have women today in combat roles in the military, leading at the front line. We cannot today be victim shaming, but that is actually what happened here to begin with. If you want to speak a little bit about that.
I wanted to add this point also, Barkha. 2 days ago, just after the day of the incident happened in Arjigor, the ex-principal of the Arjigor Medical College, he said that the woman is responsible, the girl is irresponsible enough that she was doing her duty at so late night. So this is the clear version of a victim blaming, and this is not new in our country or our state. Every incident happens and some politicians or some administration people says the girl is responsible for the incident, and fortunately he has resigned today. The principal has resigned today morning. But for that reason, we are making an agitation, we are making a gathering rather on 14th August night time, just to make the people aware, just to let the people know that women who are working late night, who are in the hospital, who are in the media, or who are in the call center, they are not safe in our state or in our country, maybe. So I will call that everyone should join our gathering also. We are doing it in different areas.
Absolutely. फैजान, इस पे अगर आप जुड़ना चाहें कि ये विक्टिम को जिस तरह से ब्लेम किया गया था इनिशियल कमेंट्स में, it's ridiculous. And even if she was not on a late night shift, it doesn't mean anything. वो ये रात के 2 बजे हो या दोपहर के 2 बजे हो, ये irrelevant है. She was at her place of work.
मैम रेजिडेंट डॉक्टर की यस मैम रेजिडेंट डॉक्टर की ड्यूटी 36 आवर 24 आवर की ड्यूटी शिफ्ट लगती है मैम. मैम चाहे मेल हो चाहे फीमेल हो, दे वर्क इन ट्रॉमा सेंटर, दे डील विद इंटॉक्सिकेटेड पर्सन. लोग जो है नशे में आते हैं और फीमेल डॉक्टर्स उनसे डील करती हैं. तो मैम ये तो जॉब है. नॉट आई एम नॉट सेइंग विद द नॉट ओनली द डॉक्टर्स, इवन द नर्सिंग स्टाफ, इवन द पैरामेडिकल स्टाफ हु आर वर्किंग इन द हॉस्पिटल. मैम हर फीमेल हर उन ऐसे लोगों से मैम डील करती है. तो मैम ये तो मैम बिल्कुल, और एक डॉक्टर के मुंह से ये बात सुनना कि नाइट ड्यूटी में वो गलत टाइम पे काम कर रही थी. मैम आप एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन या फिर जो है लड़कियों को बोल दे कि लड़कियां रात को काम नहीं करेंगी, ऐसा दिस इज नॉट पॉसिबल ना. आप
नहीं, बट क्या क्यों बोले हमें हक है टू बी इक्वल पार्टिसिपेंट्स इन द आवर्स दैट मेन वर्क. दैट इज माय राइट.
यस मैम. ये तो वाली बात हुई कि अपने आप अपनी गलतियों को नहीं सुधार रहे हैं, अपनी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को नहीं सुधार रहे हैं और सिर्फ ब्लेम गेम कर रहे हैं कि लड़कियों को कि गलत टाइम पे काम कर रहे थे, विच इज नॉट करेक्ट.
I want to ask both Abantika and Faizan before I give Dr. Dhar the last word. Faizan, अब आगे जस्टिस, अब इतना तो क्लियर है आप तीनों से बात करके कि जो इसके सारे परपेट्रेटर्स हैं वो अभी पकड़े नहीं हुए, which means we have rapists and murderers out at large. लेकिन जब डॉक्टर धर कहते हैं that it could be an inside job, that is, we don't know who it could be, and if it's an inside job, people could be protecting these insiders.
यस मैम, इसी वजह से हम लोग डिमांड कर रहे हैं कि सीबीआई इंक्वायरी इसमें होना चाहिए और जितने भी आरडी रेजिडेंट डॉक्टर एसोसिएशन है ऑल ओवर इंडिया, उनका डिमांड, सबसे पहला डिमांड यही है कि सीबीआई इस केस में सीबीआई इंक्वायरी होना चाहिए. सेकंड चीज है, जब इसमें सीबीआई इंक्वायरी प्रॉपर हो जाए देन वी विल फॉर डिमांड फॉर द वुमेन सेफ्टी, कि जहां पे भी वुमेन वर्क प्लेस हो और जो भी सेमिनार रूम हो, चाहे डॉक्टर ड्यूटी रूम हो, चाहे वर्क प्लेस उनका जो वो हो, चाहे ट्रॉमा सेंटर हो, चाहे इमरजेंसी यूनिट हो, वहाँ हर जगह सीसीटीवी कैमरा होना चाहिए एंड प्रॉपर पुलिस का प्रोटेक्शन होना चाहिए. सो वी आर आल्सो डिमांडिंग फॉर सेंट्रल प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट कि जितने भी मेडिकल कॉलेजेस हों या हॉस्पिटल्स हों उसमें जो है पुलिस की ड्यूटी लगना चाहिए फॉर अवर सिक्योरिटी, फॉर अवर सेफ्टी.
Dr. Avantika, as a doctor but as a woman, what are you looking for that will look remotely like justice?
Yeah, actually, police commissioner yesterday said that we don't have anything to hide, but yeah, it is clearly visible that they are hiding something, because from the very beginning, from the very first day, from the Friday when the incident happened, they called the victim's mother and they said, your daughter has committed suicide, and then within 24 hours they caught a guy named Sanjay, and he explained that the police explained that he may be the accused, and each and every day version is changing and changing. No, I don't think there is any clarity in the police investigation. And what Dr. Faisal said, I also think that CBI intervention should be the better option for that.
Dr. Dhar, I want to give you the last word. This feeling ki kuch chupaya ja raha hai. Even in the beginning, you said that the full story has not come out. The police has been contradicting themselves. Now, one of the more peculiar statements that has come from the police, and since you have seen the post-mortem and the autopsy report, you have a sense of the injuries. They said, we don't know if she was murdered first and then raped, or raped and then murdered. What does this mean? I mean, can you elaborate on this particular quite curious and confusing statement from the police, Dr. Dhar?
So, Barkha, I'm not sure that I understand this statement about the sequence of events. To me, this lady was raped and murdered. I wouldn't even dream of it being the other way around. Not that the first option is a better option, but I think the latter one probably is unlikely. I think what is important, Barkha, is to try and be a little transparent at a time like this. We live in a state, or we thought we lived in a state, where law and order, especially safety of women, was something which was better than a lot of other parts of the country. We now know that it is no longer the case. I think it's very important for us to understand that tomorrow, when our doctors, our young ladies go and do an on-call, in whichever hospital in the city, there are measures in place which will prevent such an incident from happening again. I think for justice to the girl, I think whenever these events happen, you would know better, Barkha, but in my book, justice is delayed anyway. And we have missed the boat, the girl is dead. So I think whatever happens now is to try and prevent perpetrators of crime, people like this, from roaming around the society, causing similar incidents like this. And we need to look at ourselves and find out what sort of team we are creating, where a girl goes missing for 3 or 4 hours on an on-call and never gets discovered till the time she's dead in the morning. So I think there needs to be points which are looked at. Every point needs to be investigated, and along with justice for the girl and for the family, which is very important. I'm not belittling that. But in my book, the greater importance is to find these people, make sure they're not wandering around loose, make sure that the systems in place, there'll be other people who are like this, the perpetrators of the crime, and we need to have systems in place so that we can prevent such events from happening, not just to the healthcare workers, the women, but also women at large.
Absolutely. Can I just ask you to take us back to the autopsy report? One of the points you made was of multiple fractures, the nature of the injuries. A lot of people don't know these details, and as horrific as they are, they do bear some repetition because transparency is important right now. You said the pelvic injuries in particular suggest to you that this was a gang rape. I just want to be sure I'm very accurate here.
You're right, Barkha. I think there were multiple injuries, some of which you described. So there were injuries around the eyes. There was bleeding from the eyes, from the nose. There was trauma on the chest. There was the pelvic bone fracture that was reported. There were scratches, marks, bleeding from all over the arm. So I know I'm painting a very grim picture. But the reason I'm doing that is just to say that for an adult lady with reasonable body weight and probably reasonable power to resist perpetrators, one man who's reasonably thin, not hugely built, even if that person was intoxicated, it would be very, very difficult for that person to inflict the injuries that we spoke about alone. I have no other indicators to say that it was a gang rape. That's what I'm going on. But in my understanding of medicine, it would be very difficult for one man to deliver these injuries to a lady who is being able to defend herself. But
have you got any satisfactory answer from the police on the fact that there are other alleged rapists possibly out there, that the medical evidence suggests that? Have the police acknowledged that?
The police has said they're continuing with the investigations, that they're very, very confident that the guy who's been caught was involved in the crime. And I too believe that. I'm not for a moment saying that the guy who's been arrested was an innocent bystander who got caught by accident. I think that guy was also responsible. But here the emphasis is on the word also. I think that's what I mean. I don't think it was one person. I think it was more than one person responsible. And I don't think it is. In my book, in my understanding, I don't think one person can cause the grievous hurt that was caused to this girl.
All right, that is something very, very chilling to know. The man we see on our screen right now is only one of the perpetrators, seen to be the one responsible for the rape and murder of a young trainee doctor in Kolkata. Doctors across India are protesting. Women and men, right-thinking men, are angry across India. And Dr. Dhar says that the autopsy report points to the fact, and the nature of the injuries suggests that this is the handiwork of more than one man. It could be two, it could be more than two, it could be between 2 and 4. We don't know, but the multiple fractures do definitely point to there being more than one person. The important part of that is that those who have done this are still out there. One arrest, yes, but not every perpetrator has been booked. We thank all three of you for raising your voice, for agreeing to join us at a moment of personal trauma for you, to Faizan, to Raja Dhar, and to Avantika Pal. Thank you, and we'll talk again soon. Take care and stay safe. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.